the kids that you love, scratch them off. They're gonna be too good for you.
Right.
If you love them, like, scratch them off. They're gonna be too good. And I probably had all kinds of pros circled on my book that I was on recruiting messages. And then it said the kids that you hate for whatever reason, whether you think they ain't good enough, you think one leg is longer than the other, you don't like his hair, if you don't like the way you run, you scratch them off. Because if you hate them for whatever reason, you're not going to do a good job recruiting them anyway, whether they're good enough or not. And then the guys in the middle, that's the guys you kind of want. And you watch those guys, and from those middle guys, pretty much going to be the guys you don't want.
Hi, I'm Corey Baldwin.
And I'm Dan Searle, and we're back with a brand new Off the Beaten Path and Off the Beaten Area Code. This is a podcast for basketball coaches living in obscurity, working in obscurity, and those like our guest today who have just made it out of obscurity.
It's a place for storytelling, learning, connecting, reconnecting, food for thought, and food for the belly. And some of our stories are even true when we tell them. They're not too exaggerated, but they're good for the show.
How big was that fish?
but today, man, we're fired up. We got Andre Gray here, Dre, as we'll call him throughout the show. And this is a guy who went from a middle school coach to now big time Division I assistant, and has been everywhere in the Carolinas in between. So we're excited to have him on, and we're going dive right into the journey. He's at North Carolina Central now, so let's start there a little bit, Dre. Tell us how does it feel to be at a place that is pretty much in the national tournament every year? So how does that feel?
Yeah, it was awesome. The opportunity to come over here was one that I really was honored to take. As I was transitioning from UNC Greensboro to my next stop, a couple of things that was really important to me. I really wanted to be a part of a winning program. There's nothing that you can substitute winning for. I wanted to make sure I worked with someone who, I ain't gonna say know what they was doing, because everybody kind of know what they're doing, right? But I wanted to make sure I was with a coach that kind of had an idea how they run their program and was secure with their own personality. And the last thing that was really important to me was, like, I wanted to be with somebody who cared about their family. Somebody that was really a family man who proven that he cares about his children. And that's something that was really important as far as the checks, the boxes I wanted to check when I was getting ready to make my next choice. And this job checked all those boxes. Like you said, they win championships. If there's Lavelle loves his kids, it's obvious in everything he says and does. And then it's obvious he knows what he's doing as well. We scrimmaged them the last few years when I was at Greensboro, so we got to coach against him a few times. And he's a dynamic play caller. He's a really, really good offensive-minded coach, and I'm excited to learn from him.
I would love to have him on too. I know when they made the tournaments, he does a lot of the weave stuff before he goes into the set. Man, he does some cool stuff. He does some cool stuff. He's
a little bit clock, but he's like I said, but he's real obvious working with him. Like, he knows that stuff now. Good gracious. Like, he's a really, really good excellent guy. He knows angles and screens and where guys should be in time. And it's been really cool working with him.
That's neat because he's credited so much for being good on social media and being out there. But I think that kind of goes under the radar that he's such a good X and O guy. That's pretty neat for you to probably learn a lot of different things and add to it as well.
Yeah, every coach I've been lucky. I guess I worked with too many guys now, but they all you can pick up something from everyone, And one of the things I was real excited about again is, like, I haven't worked a game with him yet, but from the outside looking in, he may be one of the best play callers in college basketball. So it'd be cool to watch him control the game from that perspective, like be able to call sets to get his guy shots, and what goes into that process would be kind of cool.
Before we go back to the early years of Dre Gray here, let's stay at NC Central. So how did that connection happen? He's a good play caller, and you cross paths on recruiting, but was there any more of a relationship or connection that was able to bring you there to?
Now, it was interesting because we both been in the state for so long. I actually remember watching his teams when he's an AAU coach, which is how old I am. So we always had mutual respect, but I would never say that we're some kind of great friends prior to coming to work together. But I think everybody in this state and this region kind of know my reputation as a guy who got my boots on every day, and hit the ground recruiting and been able to sign really good players, things of that nature. Then everybody kind of know his deal. This is like kind of like the X and O's guy. So we've always had mutual respect for each other from those perspectives, but we're not friends or anything. It's not like when I leave the office, I'm going to hang out at his house and watch TV and stuff like that. It's more of a working relationship, which is cool with me. I know sometimes with some younger guys, they want more of a mentorship with their head coach. And I'm at the stage now where I really don't need that kind of calling and stuff. I like that he likes being around his family because I like being around my wife too. So
Good call. Good call. But I bet that relationship grows now as you're hanging out and working hard together every day.
yes, sir. Like again, I'm really looking forward to it because to see his day-to-day stuff, especially on the offensive end, I'm real fascinated by it. And one thing about me as a person, my mind, if I need new challenges, so when I get exposed to something new, it gets my juices flowing. So it'd be really cool to learn from, because this would be the first guy I worked for probably who's built this way, who's more of a play caller type coach.
Mm.
That's interesting. I know I heard Jay Wright one time say when he worked for Rolly Massimino, in order to have time with your family, you had to make it time with his family. He said it was like being in the mob. Rolly, anytime he had a family outing, he made the assistants come to it. So he learned to just start having Rolly throw parties for his kids.
Yes, sir.
That's kind of neat that you're getting to be with somebody who, because I've known some other guys that work for Lavelle, and they've all said that he's great about giving you some actual lifetime. You get some time with your family and outside of basketball. So it's neat for you. I'm sure you're excited about that. I'm sure you've worked for some other guys where maybe that's not the case. I know you don't want to throw nobody under the bus, but
Yeah, I've had some great experiences. I just believe it's been interesting. Some guys, again, have more, not as family oriented. I should say that probably the best word to say. I don't want to bash nobody, but you have some guys that are a little bit more family oriented. So, and I've worked for all kinds, and it doesn't really affect me at all. I'm gonna do my job regardless. But if I had the preference, I like spending Sunday afternoon with my wife. If I had the preference. So.
That's good. All right. Well, let's get started then. So you take us through the path when you first fell in love with basketball, where you played, and start telling us the coaching journey.
Yeah, I was the interesting thing. My whole life journey is not typical. One of the cool things I heard a phrase. The guy of South Alabama, Richie Rowley, said, talking about the 3 golden tickets, that coaches that have the 3 golden tickets. And we all know it exists in coaching, but I never heard it put in that way. Of course, it's talking about somebody that comes from money or coming from a coaching tree or being a big time player. He called those the 3 golden tickets. And it's obvious in this business that if you have one of those things, it gives you an advantage over guys that don't. If you got 2 of them, even more advantage. If you got all 3, that's awesome. And I never heard anybody describe it in that way. So when I heard it a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago on the Zoom, I was like, dang, I started looking at my career and I don't even know if I had a copper ticket to start my life, I'm the first in my family to finish high school. The first in my family to go to college. I've probably had more addresses than humanly possible in life, lived in 30 addresses that I know of. So I'm a person who comes from, you don't say nothing, but pretty much nothing in the sense. I'm the guy that those rappers rap about, like who has sleep for dinner. I've had days where I didn't eat. I liked school so much because you got the meal at school. So that was my childhood. So when I got to where I wanted to pick a career, and when I got into college basketball, all the moving around kind of fit what I've always experienced. So I'm not afraid to move and go into new situations because my first 10 years of life, that was almost every year, every couple of months thing. So my perspective is coming from a whole different realm from a lot of guys who choose this profession. And I'm always saying these things like I wasn't a guy who grew up like when I was 15, wanting to draw on a board and say I wanted to be a college coach and watch the games from an analytical perspective. When I watched games when I was young, when I fell in love with sports, I watched the players. I wanted to be Jordan. I wanted to be Ewing. I wanted to be whoever. I never looked at a game and said, hey, I would love to be Dean Smith one day, or I'd like to be John Thompson. It wasn't until I grew and matured that path came in my head. So my first job, as you guys mentioned, was the middle school, was Clayton Middle School. I went to Fayetteville State first, as I was the worst football player in the history of Fayetteville State football. I went there supposedly as a scholarship kid, and I sucked so bad. I don't know what happened and all that stuff, but I enjoyed going out and partying and being social more than I loved playing football, and my academics showed it. Once I started maturing a little bit, I wound up transferring to Methodist College, and that's why I played basketball in college. And it wound up being one of the best things I've ever done. Going to play at Methodist connected me to Bob McAvoy, who was my coach, who was the AD at the time when I got my first college job. My assistant coach was a guy named David Smith, and he was the head coach that hired me and gave me my first college job. So it all went full circle for me. And it was cool how life works. But I'm at Fayetteville State, not knowing what I'm going to do with myself. Got the opportunity to transfer to Methodist. Once I got there, I knew I wanted to pursue a degree, education. And the whole thing with that was I knew I made mistakes growing up. I knew I was supposed to be a guy that's not supposed to make it. Like my background means that I'm a Black man who's poor, whose family's all connected in the drug game. So I'm not supposed to make it. So what drove me into the education field was, hey, I want to be able to reach people like me. Say like you're able to write your own path. Now you're going to have to do more work and jump more hurdles sometimes, but you're able to write your own path if you put the work in. And that's what took me towards education and wanting to be a teacher and wanting to be a coach. So the Clayton job came open. Of course, I applied, and as we could be honest on this thing, being a Black male certified to teach, you can find the job in the schools usually. I went to Clayton as a middle school football / basketball coach, and it was great. I loved both sports equally at that time, but I learned in football it was a little bit harder to manipulate. Football, if you're bigger, faster, stronger, unless you just make bad decisions, you're gonna win most games. In basketball, I learned that I can manipulate the game a little bit more. I can run some junk defenses. I can hold the ball. I can do this. I can do different things to kind of dictate whether I won or lost. So that what got my mind turning more towards the basketball side of things. And like I said, my first job, it was wild. I tell a story all the time. And when I played in high school, we had the worst rule ever. We didn't let guys get breakaway layups. And our coach always say, hey, don't let them get layups, don't let them get layups. And I never really was taught what that meant. So we just knew if somebody would take it off with the ball, you wouldn't pretty much tackle them out the air. And my very first game as a middle school coach, I said that. I never said it not one time.
Oh, no.
Until the first game, pregame talk. Yeah, we're not going to give no layups. Man, we gave up 10 and ones late in the first half. I said, hey, dude, stop fouling these kids. So I learned, hey, man, if I'm going to have that rule, I better teach these guys how to foul. So the next day, we went across like how to foul across the arms. And so that was my first lesson learned in coaching. Like, you think you know what you're doing until you have to live it sometimes. So
I thought that story was going the other way. I thought some kid was headed to the hospital there.
Well, no, nobody
teeing that one up.
They was giving like the softest fouls ever. I was like, dude, you can't.
But that's a great point. You have to teach. You don't expect middle school kids or high school or college kids to know what you're talking about. Teach it to them. I love that.
They had no clue how to foul, which is right.
And listen, for our avid viewers, for our regular viewers, all three of you, you know who you are. When we're talking about Clayton Middle School, we make a lot of Clayton County, Georgia references, a lot of Clayton State references. We're in a different place, right, Coach?
Clayton, North Carolina, Johnston County. That's really, like I said, it was cool. They had a lot of really good. Oh man, those guys was awesome. I got to work with, and they had some guys that went on to play. I guess Gary Clark is in the NBA now. Who played? I didn't coach Gary. I'm so old. I taught his mom and his uncles and stuff back in the day. But they had a few guys come through there and have really good success.
Listen, what's the area code for Clayton in North Carolina?
That would be a 919.
919. Okay, and we'll come back to that as we go through the rest of this. We'll ask you that at every stop, Coach.
And Methodist, what was Methodist College area code?
Oh, that was 910.
Okay, so we're 910 to 919. All right. So now you leave Clayton Middle. Are you thinking now, hey, you're gonna climb the ranks, go to the next highest level, high school, or are you just trying to get the next job?
A little bit, kind of on both. Again, my juices got flowing. Now I'm a coach. You know, I went into it to kind of teach, but now I'm starting to, hey, I could be a coach. I'm really getting excited about the coaching idea. The middle school was cool because those kids was like the sponges. They would do anything you told them to do. But then I got kind of my head. I wanted to try a little bit higher level. So let's try to get to the high school. And at this time, my career goal was to be the head football coach / basketball coach at East Bladen High School, where I went to school. So I still wasn't ready to say I wanted to pursue college yet, but I just wanted to try to get a high school job. So Oxford Webb, JF Webb High School up in Oxford, North Carolina, had a position open, and they hired me as the assistant football and assistant basketball coach. And then I got to be the head coach of the JV basketball team. So that's why I went to that position. That program had a really good tradition in both football and basketball. I think there was a state championship in football a couple of years before that. They actually played our Clayton high school team that year, so I got to see the athletes they had. And they had, good gracious, they had some athletes. That place, the 4x1, they had like 6 of the fastest dudes in the state of North Carolina at that time. There's like 6 of them. Martin Higgs, I can't remember the other guy's name now. Quincy, they had a kid named Lance, but they pretty much won the state 3A track championship. Just those 6 dudes, they're so fast. They like finished 1, 2, and 3 in the 100, and 1, 2, and 3 in the 200, and
all the events.
one of them won the high jump, one won the long jump. It was the wildest thing. They had athletes for days. But doing the football, again, had a great time doing it. And coaching the basketball is what kind of got me interested in college. We had a kid named Teron Downey on the team. Teron went to play at Wake Forest later on, but watching him and his recruiting process was what got my wheels turning towards the college basketball thing. The guys coming in there and having conversations with them was like, oh man, you get to coach ball and just travel over the country. That seemed really cool. Mm-hmm. And then on the same time, at that stage of my life, I was a big time Duke fan. Like I cried when Bobby Hurley got the Hurleys, man. When UNLV beat him by 30, I cried like a baby. But the guy I worked with, Mike Kincaid, was a longtime counselor at Duke basketball camp. And I was living in Durham, working in Oxford, and I lived maybe 5 minutes from Duke campus. And they had somebody that show up to work one morning for camp. So KK knew I was a Duke fan, called me, like, hey, they got a spot, you want to come work camp? And I've never, at this point in my life, I've never even been to a camp before. I've never seen what a camp was. I've never been to camp as a child, never went to camp as a coach, anything. So I drove down the street and worked Duke basketball camp as the first ever camp I worked, which was, again, another great experience. Coach John Thompson at North Carolina Wesleyan kind of took a liking to me. I played against him when he was a coach, and he started putting in my ear. Yeah, JT kind of started putting in my ear, like, you know what, you might need to try college. You got a good temperament. He's like, hey, you might be a good college coach. You got a good temperament with the guys. So with him telling me that, and then watching Teron go through the recruiting process, that what got my mind on, hey, maybe I want to try college, because now not only I get to coach, but now I can help change my life in a different way by helping pulling guys into college. So that was my whole desire. I wanted to get to the college level from there.
That Duke camp it's a machine, but it also allows for so many different connections, right? Who else did you work with?
It was wild, because I never worked camp before, and I'm a Duke fan now, so I'm in there all excited. I got my little Duke polo on, and they but the very first day, a guy named Jeff Lemire was the guy who directed the camp. Yeah. And I think everybody who runs the Duke camp do the same thing. They call out every coach who's working name. So they go down the list, and I'm all nervous, like, hey, you gonna remember my name? Mind you, I just got signed up that morning. And he said, Coach Gray. I was, oh man, I'm the greatest thing ever. I'm a Duke coach. But I made some great relationships. Besides JT, of course, one of my really good friends, Tim Kane, I met him working camp. He was an assistant at Murray State. Mm-hmm. And so it was really, really good. And because of the Tim relationship, I got to get to know Matt McMahon, who was his high school teammate, and some of these other guys. So it was called. I really appreciate Duke camp. I wish like Division I guys could do that now.
Right.
The one good thing about that, you got to interact with Division I and Division II coaches when you worked at camp. So that was probably one of the best things I took from it. And I'll segue a little bit. I started working the 5-star camp as I got the Methodist. And again, they're kind of the same thing. Being able to work and watch the Division I guys, head coaches and assistant coaches work their stations and things like that. It was such a blessing to learn from those guys. But Tim is like my favorite person. He probably beat me up, even though I ain't say his name during this podcast. But yeah, Tim,
you got him in early. You got him.
Yeah, he's like my longest tenured friend, probably in coaching. And it goes back to working those Duke camps together. I think he was interning at that time, so I'm a little bit older.
I'll tell you, the first year I worked Duke camp, I was a scrubby, nobody assistant at Emory University Division III, and Coach K's walking around, running stations. I'm running station. He's like, "Hey, Emory, that's a good school. Coach Searle, keep up the good work." I'm like, "What?" So, you got that guy interacting with the camp coaches like it's an everyday thing. And then just like you're saying with Tim, that network, my network of people that I know in coaching right now, about half of it goes back to people from working Duke camp. It's amazing how if you're just there to work hard and meet good people, it all kind of flows out of there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of messed me up though, because again, I told you my first camp experience was working through camp. So I thought that's what every camp was like. And a couple years later, I started working like Wake Forest and some of these places camps, and I was like, "This ain't camp. They just in here for like 30 minutes." Like at Duke, they work you all day. You doing stations twice, and I thought every camp was like that. I worked Duke and then 5 stars my first 2, so.
Right. There's no card games. No card games.
Yeah. So when I started working other camps, like shoot, they would rip me off at Duke. They owe me some money or something.
I was the other way around. I worked all the camps where it was card games and dominoes, and I never made it to Duke or Carolina. I didn't get into the real camps.
Oh, Carolina say, but they let you play golf all day. I never worked Carolina camp. Back in the camp days, I was, I'm a Duke fan. I can't work no Carolina camp.
I like the loyalty.
Which is kind of ironic because I work for 2 Carolina guys now. So
that's awesome. And now you're in Durham.
Now I'm in Durham.
All right. So now you go from being a middle school head coach to now a JV head coach, high school assistant on the varsity, still doing some football. Now you're working camps, and then that takes you where?
My first college job, Methodist College. Went back to my alma mater because it's Methodist University now. Again, I started getting the itch to try college. They wound up losing an assistant while my itch is going on. I'm a quirky dude. You probably figured that out from being on a podcast with me for 30 minutes. But I get something in my head. I won't stop talking about. I won't stop trying to pursue it until I check it off the box, right? So I started driving my wife crazy talking about college coaching. And the spot opened up. So it all just happens to happen at the right time. The spot opened in Fayetteville. She's familiar with Fayetteville. We lived in Fayetteville as college students because she went to Fayetteville State University. That's where we met. Her freshman year was my 3rd year there. So I was able to talk her into let me try college coaching. The job paid $2,000 for the year. And I say that to people, it's like $2,000 per month. No, $2,000 for the year, spread over 10 months. So my check, like $178 a month is why but I was able to talk her into doing it because we was going back to Fayetteville. She didn't particularly care for Durham at the time. She had friends in Fayetteville, and she know how I am. She know if I didn't get it off my chest, that I was going to drive her crazy. So the deal was, I'm gonna try it for 2 years. And if I don't like it for whatever reason, I'll just go back to the school system. And I was at that time certified. So I was like, I hate to keep saying it, but I was a black dude with a certified to teach in North Carolina. So I was going to be able to get a job somewhere. It might not have been back where I was at, but I felt pretty comfortable that I'd be able to get a teaching job. So went to Methodist and I've been in college ever since. That job was awesome because Dave Smith, the head coach there, he gave me a chance to kind of figure out my niche and how I was going to grow in this game. We never really talked about next steps when we was together. I didn't know what I was walking myself into. Sometimes people want me to talk about recruiting on some of these Zooms, and I tell the story all the time. Maybe my first week on the job. Now, Dave had me go watch this tournament in Charlotte. And I'm going to this tournament, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. It's like the prep all-stars or prep stars semester at UNC Charlotte. And they got 6 courts going on. These kids are running around all over the place. And And again, I remind you, I wasn't that big time a player, and that stuff wasn't as common when I was coming through anyway. So that was the first time I went into one of those type of events. So I'm in there like with my little packet and circling names and writing down notes. And I remember coming back to the office on that Monday, and then I went to, I went to Bob McAvoy. I went back to my the guy I played for, and I went in the office like, Coach, like, I don't know what just happened. I was up there 3 days, man. I ain't get nothing done. And he gave me probably the best advice somebody had given me to this point, even to this point in my career. He told me, Dre, when you go to an event like that, do 2 things. The kids that you love, scratch them off. They're gonna be too good for you. Right. Like, if you love them, like, scratch them off. They're gonna be too good. And I probably had all kinds of pros circled on my book that I was gonna recruit from that. And then he said the kids that you hate for whatever reason, whether you think they ain't good enough, you think one leg is longer than the other, you don't like his hair, if you don't like the way you run, you scratch them off. Because if you hate them for whatever reason, you're not going to do a good job recruiting them anyway, whether they're good enough or not. And then the guys in the middle, that's the guys you kind of watch. And you watch those guys, and from those middle guys, pretty much going to be the guys you're going to want to recruit. And so even like I still kind of use that advice now when I go on.
That's great advice. That's great advice. Unless you're at the high majors,
you got the highest,
scratch them off there. Take the middle.
And when you're at the highest levels, you know, the top guys, but even for some programs, even some BCS schools, they can't get those guys even now. They need to scratch those guys off too. Now they can try to get a swing at them, but like there was no sense in never mind, I'm not gonna call the school name, but there's some schools in South Carolina and North Carolina probably shouldn't have called Zion with. Like you wasn't getting Zion, stop it. So even those guys should have that same kind of rule. They probably based off the top 200 kids. Like take the top 10 off, the bottom 50 off, and then go from there. That's where their kids gonna come from too. You know, so they probably could use the same advice or the same rule.
Like, so you go from where you played. Now the guy that was the head coach that you played for was the AD. So the guy you were coaching with, was he an assistant when you were there?
Yeah, Dave was my assistant. It's kind of funny because our relationship wasn't great as a player coach. Like we was cool. But I was laugh because I used to fuss at him. He's coming irritating. I was not a great shooter when I played. I've never been a great shooter. But I always remember like doing shooting drills. He'd come over there like poking at me. Like, by the time you made a shot, and he used to piss me off. I think he's pissed me off on purpose. So we used to get into a little bit of practice, and so it was wild that he gave me my first opportunity at the college level, being that it wasn't like we was real close as a player coach relationship. So, but he's a really nice man. I love Dave to death. He's still there, actually, still the head coach of Methodist, and has won multiple championships and does a really good job with his program.
That's awesome. So you go from there, which was a D3 to now a D2, and you have your own success, correct? You guys go to Elite 8 and you're on top of the world, right?
Yeah, at Methodist, we won the league. We won the league one of my years at Methodist. Won the regular season, maybe my second year. So we did pretty good there as D3, but got the Wingate opportunity. Again, that's when I started working 5-star. I started getting to know people. It's funny, like it's one job you guys won't see on my resume, but I actually worked at Pembroke for 2 weeks. Brian Garvin called me at UC Pembroke as a GA, leaving Methodist. And this business is so wild. I interviewed for 3 jobs at the same time. I interviewed for Pembroke, Coastal Carolina, and Wingate, all like within a week of each other. Again, mind you, I don't know what the devil I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing in this profession. And maybe Howard Garfinkel is how I got involved with the Coastal Carolina job. Not sure. Oh, Rob Dooley, who's is how I got involved with the Wingate. And then the Pembroke was the job right down the road, right? You got to know a little bit. And
that the year they didn't win any games?
At where?
Pembroke.
No, I thought they did a pretty good job. I never got to actually coach a physical game there.
Okay. Because I was going to say, I might have got lucky if that was the year. I didn't know that was the year.
I took the job, and I interviewed for Wingate and Coastal both at the same time. I wanted to take it to Pembroke because he offered it first. And I was going to work 5-star. So I took the job, took a shirt, got my keys, and drove to Pittsburgh to work 5-star. And while I'm there, I got offered the Wingate job. And I was actually a finalist for both Wingate and Coastal. And I can't remember the guy's name, but he was an assistant at Pfeiffer at the time. And we were both finalists for both jobs. And he got the Coastal, so I had to settle for the Wingate, but it wound up being a blessing. I ain't gonna say settle because my Wingate experience is awesome. And I think Coastal got fired the next year. So it worked out for me. My wife always used the phrase when she talked about me, the Lord looks out for babies and fools, and I'm not a baby, so all my stuff worked out right. But,
That's pretty good.
Was there an insult hidden in there?
yeah. So I don't know, man. I don't know, but I ain't no baby, so it all worked out.
How we doing on area codes now?
Oh shoot, that moves me from the 910 to 704 for the first time.
704. All right.
Yeah, but Wingate was phenomenal, man. That Rob Dooley is like, oh, he's such a good person. One of the best human beings I worked with. Parker LeKeller was the same way. He was a lot like Dave Smith, that he allowed me to kind of grow. By the end there, Parker gave me a lot of leeway to sign the kids. Like my last class there, I don't even think Parker met those kids until they got on campus, which was cool that he had them kind of trust in me
Right.
to let me go out and recruit. And one thing I try to do and still try to do is I met a guy named Jerry Dunn. Jerry Dunn was the head coach of Penn State at the time. He's from Raleigh. He's a North Carolina guy. I wound up I'm super observant, and that's one of probably my gifts. I watch people, I read people, I listen well. And one thing I was looking at, I started to get the itch to move up to Division I while I was at Wingate. We had some success. And Jerry Dunn, I watched Jerry move around the gym, and I noticed that he's kind of quiet. He's always to himself when he went out and evaluated. And it didn't seem to be the path to making it in Division I. You watch a lot of the guys, the other Division I guys, they in the gym and they corners, high-fiving each other and laughing and joking and having a good time. And I watched Jerry, and he kind of chill. He kind of in his own little area with a notepad. So I sat beside him one day and said, hey, how did you make it doing this? Like, this don't seem to be the formula for doing it. And he was like, Dre, you got to be what you are. You don't get caught up trying to be somebody else. If that's your personality type, people are going to notice the work that you put in if you're doing it yourself. And I was like, God, I never thought about it that way. But then I asked him about advice for me. Like, again, we talked about the free golden tickets earlier. Again, I don't have a ticket at all to get a golden ticket. And he was like, one way I could help myself is if I could find something that I could bring to the table that nobody else can. And that's kind of probably how I started getting the Mr. North Carolina rep down the line. I decided my thing was going to be, I was going to learn every kid. I'm going to learn every kid in North Carolina.
Okay.
And it was as the internet and stuff was just starting off. So I can't remember it was a link, but it had every newspaper in North Carolina linked to it. And so every morning I get up, I click on the link, and I follow the box scores and see what kids did what. And then I started, and this time, between camps and building relationships, I started to know some of the Division I guys and some of the guys I knew in D3 and D2. And I would just jump in cars with dudes. So, because, we didn't have no recruiting budget. So there's something going on in Orlando. I hit my buddy at High Point, Darren Cone. Hey, man, let's ride. And Darren let me sleep on his floor, and I ride in his car. And I just started wanting to learn all the kids in the state. And then after I learned the North Carolina kids, I started trying to learn the South Carolina kids and the Georgia kids and the Virginia kids. But I always wanted to be, my thing was, I'm gonna know everything that moves in North Carolina, whether it's my level or not. So, and people started to learn that I would be out all the time. They'd see me out, and I always just wear slacks. And I wore slacks kind of twofold. One was like, I get cold easily, and some of those gyms are freaking cold. And the second thing is, people might not know who I am, but they remember these freaking gold slacks I walk around in. And that was kind of unintentional, me wearing my pants, because
no ticket, but you got your own calling card.
Yeah, so I'd walk around these hard bottom Stacey Adams and some slacks everywhere in July and stuff. And guys kind of got to know me. Hey, that's the dude that wear the pants, and that's the dude that know all the kids in North Carolina. And that's about the same time when Dave Tellep was coming around. Yeah. When Dave Tellep started getting big, and Dave Tellep had a relationship with Matt McMahon. And so I got to know Dave through that way, and he started doing his top 100 camps. And I used to help Dave with some of the kids that I would see and send them the names of guys that should come. And he used to send me all the information on all the kids. So now my reputation started growing, because now the coach at App State, man, I know a kid, but now I know more than just the kid's name. I could give you the kid's phone number. I was a scouting service before scouting services were cool. If I was smarter, I'd be rich right now. Because I should have been selling all that information all these years. But what happened again, a guy would call me and say, Dre, you see this kid at Fayetteville 71st? And I'd be like, yeah, 6'7" shooter, can't go left, yada, yada. But then I could give him, hey, here goes his mom name, here goes his dad name, this is his coach's name and number and things of that nature. So that's how my reputation started growing there. But our run at Wingate was phenomenal as from a coaching perspective. Like I said,
Right.
the team, we had 6, 7 guys on that team who could have played for any team I've coached so far. And you know, y'all know I coached the Conference USA and the Colonial back when it was the Colonial, and Brian Guerrero and Sean Barnett and Justin Baker and Sean Kirkland. Some of these guys could play anywhere I've been. They was phenomenal. They was really, really good players, and they're really, really good kids, and they had a really good bond. That team, it probably should have won the national championship that year. Barton won it. That's the year Barton had the magical run that season. But it was fun coaching those kids, and that last class of kids that we was about to bring in, we had all those guys coming back the year after the final besides the point guard. And we ended up signing the point guard who was the y'all might know me, Georgia kid, Brandon Shingles, down at Chipola now. I had Brandon signed at Wingate to come in and play with all those All-American wings and all-time leading shot blocker in Division II, and it was wild. That team would, if they would stay healthy, they definitely would have won it if I wouldn't have left.
How about that? But you're talking about that team. You were able to move on. Take us to the next move, the next step.
Go all the way. I'm gonna drag this show out for 3 hours, right? Y'all sure you got enough time for me to go through all these? I'll speed up a little bit, so my story isn't shortened up.
That's what we started doing. About halfway through the show, we put the shot clock on. So 24 seconds, go.
But Gardner Webb was awesome. I got the itch again, kind of the same thing. I wanted to go from Methodist to Wingate because I wanted to give scholarships. Now I want to go from Wingate to the Division I because I could get full scholarships. And you want to play in the highest stage, right? You want to play in the highest levels and coach at the highest levels. Start feeling myself thinking I was too good, and now I got to move up to D1 to prove everything. But got to work with Chris Holtman and Doug Essick was the other two staff coaches on that staff. And Rick Scruggs was the head coach, and that was unbelievable. Like I always knew I worked hard, but I worked hard in my own kind of way. With Parker and with Bob, with Dave Smith, they kind of let me do my thing. So I kind of got to work on my own schedule a lot. With Holtman, trying to keep up with Holtman and Doug was a whole different animal. Trying to learn how to do it on the Division I level, especially lower college, because you got all the coaches, your academic advisor, you got to do all these workouts with these dudes. You got to do so much extra stuff at the Division I level, at small college Division I level that I didn't have to touch in Division II and Division III. That's Division III kids, they're in school for education anyway. So you sit them in a room for with a study hall, they know how to do their own work. Because most of those guys want to be their students first, right? In Division II, you got kind of a mix. You know, they had some guys you had to keep a thumb on, but some of the guys they were self-sufficient academically. Now we get to Division I. A lot of these dudes play. They come to school for basketball first, so some of them don't really necessarily care so much about the academics part. So you gotta have your thumb on them a little bit more academically. But my first season, it was like the third or fourth game of the season. We played Kentucky at Kentucky and beat them. And you talking about Dre Gray thought he was hot then. I was like, man, what the devil these guys been doing? This Division I stuff easy. What's going on? So what's going on? Like this stuff is easy. That was but it was like I said, that season was cool, man. We had some really good players. Thomas Sanders was phenomenal on that team. Grayson Flipner shot the mess out the ball. But the coolest thing was like me and Doug. Like Doug has evolved into one of my closest friends in the business now. Me and Doug got extremely close, and Holtman, we got extremely close, and that I more learned about how to work as a college coach from those guys more than anything. Those guys both was phenomenal, great basketball people. I like to talk to, especially Doug, because our perspectives are so different. So I actually bounce a lot of stuff through him because I'm more of an emotional thinker, and he's more of an analytical thinker. So when I have something on my chest, I bounce it through him a lot because he thinks from a different plane than I do. You know,
So where was next after Gardner Webb in the major city of Bowling Springs?
Bowling Springs, that was what, 704? That was 704 area code. And then I go to Western Carolina with Larry Hunter. Larry Hunter was awesome. Again, that's God, man, that dude don't get enough love. He got to be one of the great basketball minds to ever do this thing.
Corey's a big fan. I know that, right?
Yeah, Larry's the man. Larry's the man, and Larry was cool. I love working with Larry. I know it's kind of weird because some assistants kind of knock him because of his work ethic. But he was phenomenal as far as a basketball guy. He was his ability to plan the game plan was second to none. He actually gave I think as coaches you learn. When I was a young coach, you could still move around with the players a lot. So you could when you wanted to describe something to them, you could just go out there and do it. So, hey man, I want you to jab with your right foot. Larry had this great way, and Chris Holtman had the same gift. They was able to make you see stuff with their words. Their words kind of you could imagery, and those two have a gift to that, man. I wish I had that gift. Being with Larry for 3 years was an unbelievable experience. The guys I worked with there made it even better. Everybody talk about Cullowhee and how rough it is to live, but my time there was nothing but positive. Eric Wilson was phenomenal, Anquel McCollum, Wade O'Connor, Brigham, the guys we played, Brandon Giles is in coaching now. We had some really, really good people. Tom Tankiewicz is in coaching now down at Presbyterian. It was such a really, really good experience for me because the best thing about that place, and I said, I tell the new staff there, I know they got new staff now. Like the one thing I figured out there was just trying to recruit different people. And the thing with Western was you had to recruit extroverted people. You couldn't recruit people that wanted to be entertained by their surroundings. If you needed movie theaters or malls and stuff to make you happy, like you wasn't going to be successful there because you're all going to think about is that stuff. But if you have some personality to you, you ain't mind and meeting with different kinds of people and learning new things. It was a great spot.
Hey, I got to follow up on that one. And Mr. Waycross, I'm going to ask you the same question. You're talking about based on location of the school, you have to recruit a certain personality, Dre. So you need an extrovert because the surroundings aren't going to entertain them. Is that how you phrase that?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah.
How about that? Corey, do you approach that at all? And Waycross is let's get the people who are going to bring the energy themselves. They're not going to be entertained. Or does Waycross have the entertainment?
No, I think he's right on point. The other thing it helps with is the professors and people working at the school tend to attract to those people more because they're dealing with the same thing. Yep. They don't have the same amount of entertainment. So now if they have a person who's interacting with them, they tend to gravitate to them. And, yep. It usually goes pretty well. That's pretty awesome. But you had the training because you went from Bowling Springs to, you actually had to step up. You were one of the few guys you thought that was a bigger city probably.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome, man. I thought it was like, and Larry Hunter, I got to know Larry a little bit a couple of years before that. It was funny. I can tell a story. Larry, rest in peace. And I don't know, he probably heard me say this before, but how I got linked up with Larry was kind of fluky. Again, my reputation is building now. I'm supposed to be this Mr. North Carolina. This is when my reputation first started growing, where I knew all the kids. Mm-hmm. And I was at Wingate at that time before I got the web job. And Larry Hunter just got the Western job. And him and Dustin Ford was on staff. Dustin came down from Ohio, and Larry was on staff in NC State. So they happened to be sitting at the watching the North Carolina Gators 19 and under AAU team. And I happened to be sitting beside them. And it couldn't have been a more perfect team for me to be like the showdown. I know everything's going on. Because I actually coached, because I knew all those kids inside. I actually coached one of them, Teron Downey, little brother, Montez. So I'm like, yeah, that's Montez Downey. That's his uncle sitting over there. There goes his mom in the stands. And they're like, damn, this dude know everybody, know everything. And I was kind of cheating. I knew those people like for years and years before that. But after that, Larry just thought I was this great thing on basketball guru. So he'll text me about kids. And one thing, even when before I started working for him, like I would send Anquel, because me and Anquel got to know each other from this time in Fayetteville. And I'd be like, Anquel, you need to check out this kid, XYZ at West Columbus. And when he'll say something to Larry would text me asking, hey, you know this kid? And it's like, yeah, he's a great kid, follow up with him. So it was like the funniest thing. But when that position opened up on the staff, he hired me and gave me a chance to come up there. But I'm telling you, it was a blessing for me. I really enjoyed my time.
And 3, 2, 1, Western Carolina shot clock goes off. What's next? And what's the next area code?
Western was the 828. It's the first time I lived in the 828.
828.
from Western, I go to UNC Wilmington. I go UNC Wilmington. I go back to the 910 where my college days was at.
On the water now, huh?
Yeah, got to go chance to go home. Bladen County, where I grew up. I spent from 11 on. It's about 35 minutes from there. So it gave me a chance to go home, go back to be comfortable, go back to a warmer climate. And the business supposedly, I'm starting to hear how the business supposedly work. And one of the things is I'm trying to get my golden ticket, right? I'm trying to get my first golden ticket was working for somebody under a big tree. I got to work for the infamous Buzz Peterson. And Buzz is, God, man, I don't know if there's a nicer man who's been a Division I head coach. There can't be many of them. I love Buzz to death. Him and his wife, Jan, they phenomenal people. Again, probably the most influential people in my career now. I bounced a lot of stuff through Buzz, and he's become a really, really good friend of mine. And he helps me out because he makes me sound good when I use him as a reference. But I went to go work at Wilmington, and that was the old Colonial. And I'm going to rewind back a little bit. I actually interviewed for Buzz twice. I would tell the story. I interviewed for when he first got the job down there. And he told me, well, this is a bull job, but at the time he told me he didn't hire me because he had a Carolina guy on staff. And it pissed me off. I was, hey man, like, what do you mean you got Carolina? You got nobody like me, you got me on your staff. Like, so that year, and Eric Wilson, those guys can tell you, I was like the lead recruiter, and it's unprofessional now. So young coaches don't do what I did in this situation. So I'm mad I ain't get the Wilmington jobs. So I told the other guys on staff, man, Larry Hunter gonna make me check off on all kids we recruit. So if you bring me a North Carolina kid, we're not taking no North Carolina kids this year. Nobody gonna say Drake Ray can only recruit North Carolina.
Oh.
And this way, all my camp references all my camp relationships come in handy. I've always did Carolina kids primarily because this is home. Like, you want to take care of your home, right? You want to take care of your people. But I've signed kids from every state here, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Texas, Oklahoma. But working 5-star is two areas that a lot of guys used to come work there at camp, from Texas, and Dallas area, and then down in Florida. And I knew people down there, and whenever I needed to, I could always reach into those areas. But this year, I was like, we're not doing no North Carolina kids. So I wound up connecting with all my people in the Dallas area, set up some workouts to go out there and see. And Larry would let me kind of come and go as I please with the recruiting stuff. So I set up for a week in Dallas. And the very first day of the live period in Dallas, 6 o'clock in the morning, there's a guy who worked camp with, had a big kid. So I'm sitting in the gym. We hung out a little bit the night before. And here come Buzz Peterson walking in the gym. And he looked up like, oh, boy, you're everywhere. I said, I told you I can recruit anywhere. Yeah. But I think that helped me the following year with getting the job, is that now he see I can move anywhere I want to. But that class, we ended up taking 2 kids from Texas, and we took a kid from Savannah, Georgia. And the kid from Savannah is one of the all-time greats at Western Carolina, so it worked out. And all of them had good careers. Well, 2 of them went there and had good careers. And then the third one actually didn't qualify. He wound up playing at Tennessee later on after going to junior college. So I think we got him right, but he wasn't that good player at Tennessee. I ain't gonna call him out. Maybe he won't listen to this podcast, but
10 seconds left on the Wilmington clock.
But again, Wilmington was awesome. A lot of that was, Jamie Kashmerick and Matt McMahon and Brooks Lee, who's a phenomenal basketball mind, and the guys you got to work with down there was, oh man, unbelievable. Kevin Leasley. Our last year down there, we had 3 Division I head coaches or former head coaches. We had Eddie Biedenbach and Houston Fancher on staff, which was that experience alone was unbelievable, because them guys allowed me to grow. They actually let me, when you're in meetings with the guys like that, and you have input and they take your input, and that was unbelievable. And I actually got to run the defenses the last 2 years I was down there. So it was a really, really good experience. Unfortunately, we wasn't able to get the program going like we could have. So,
well, Searle, we have to mention, he said UNCW, we have to mention Hebs. Jimmy Hebron, our former head coach that we both worked for, was a graduate of there and lives in some houseboat up there now, probably drinking some adult beverages as we speak.
Beach somewhere, yeah.
But anyway, we have to at least mention him. He might actually watch it. I doubt it, but if he is, we got to give him love so he doesn't call us and get on to us. So you go from UNCW to where?
Winston-Salem State.
All right.
Back in the Division II world, first HBCU experience. The Wilmington exit for our staff was a little, I don't know, hard for me because up until this point, my career was going up. I was, went from D3 to D2, D1, worked for Larry Hunter, now I work for Buzz Peterson. So I was like thinking I'm like the dude, like, and one thing you learn in this business, you never the dude. What goes up must come down in this business. And I didn't understand it because I never had that experience. Every up to that point, I had success. My first Division I year, we beat Kentucky. My first year at Western Carolina was the most wins in season in school history. My 3 years at Western is the best, I guess, 3-year window the program has ever had. We averaged 20 wins a season up with Cullowhee, and it ain't been done since. It probably won't ever be done again. It's like the most wins in school history. We have, if you look at the record books, some of the best players that will play there was during our time. So you go into Wilmington and it doesn't go as well, and you still got the relationship with Buzz, and you work with some phenomenal guys, and we got let go. I found out that we got let go before our season ended. We knew that we got fired before the conference tournament. And that was actually on the road with Tim Kaine, because Tim Kaine got fired at FAU that year. And I remember sitting like, Cam, you can't sit in the house, man. You got to come out and see people. But I never lived the life of being fired before. But I'm in the gym trying to talk Tim Kaine off the ledge, and I get the call from Buzz, like, hey, they let us go. Yeah, so I'm in the gym, and then we couldn't let nobody know. It wasn't public knowledge yet. So I'm in the gym trying to talk this guy off the ledge. I want to cry on the inside myself. So that experience was different for me. I didn't know how to respond. Again, at that point, I have mentors, but not like really somebody to really go to with this kind of stuff. And I decided I wanted out of Division I. I'm not a Division I guy. I wanted to go back to where I started. I went to Fayetteville State, had a really good experience there as a student. And my goal was, hey, like, I wanted to coach in the HBCU. If I could do well at Winston State, which I thought was a great job at that level, maybe the guy that's there now will move on. Maybe I could get Fayetteville State one day. Maybe I could get Shaw or one of the CIAA schools if one of them opened. So I went to Winston State, and for me, it was like a great experience because that's the first time I worked for a guy who that was his first job, and that process is wild. Like we all as assistants, you think you want to be a head coach, like, oh man, and we got all these cute phrases, we got all these acronyms you use in these interviews, but implementing a program is a lot harder than it seems. And watching that guy go through it, it made my wheels turn so much, and like watching like, oh man, who you gonna hire if you get a job? What kind of system you gonna be able to run at the place that you got the job at? How you gonna go about raising money? How you gonna go about doing scheduling and all this stuff that I never really thought about like deeply. Now I've had the responsibility, like at Western I did scheduling, at Wilmington I did scheduling, I did equipment at jobs, I ran camp before at jobs. I've done everything that's supposed to be required of being a head coach. But that was the first time I saw somebody like, I've always inherited a system that already was in place. And this is the first time you had to watch somebody try to put in their own system for those things. It was wild. It was interesting to see.
Across everything that you just mentioned and more, right?
Yeah,
that's got to be a big growth experience.
Who was the coach, Dre? Who was it?
James Wilhelmy was the coach there. And James is a really nice guy. I appreciate him giving me that experience because I learned so much watching him with his first time. I mean, watching his first 90 days. It's one thing to hear about it, but to watch somebody go through their first 90 days, it was eye-opening for me because everybody I worked for to that point was long-time head coaches. And he hired the guy, Justin Griffith. Justin is at North Carolina Wesleyan now. And God, that was a blessing in itself. But Justin, you gotta be happy where you are. You gotta grow where you plant it. But he's a guy who should be a Division I assistant. Like I know he has kind of the desire to be. There's no reason why he shouldn't be. It got a point where I knew I was about to move on while I was there during my first year, and that guy carried me for about 2 or 3 months down the stretch. He's a phenomenal dude, phenomenal coach, and I actually pray for him all the time when these jobs open that somebody give him a shot. He's a really good dude.
How about that, Dre? You are doing an incredible job on this podcast, man, of saying as many names as possible. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's the people along the way. So keep that up. Got a question on HBCUs. They're finally starting to get their due, both on basketball and academics, on the work that gets done. still a long way to go. But what are some of the challenges and what are some of the positives of the HBCUs that people don't know about?
You know, and that's part of why I'm sitting here with the shirt on now. I wanted to see it from the side at this level. Because you hear the stories about, oh man, they don't have budgets, they got this, they don't have that. But I'll be honest with you, I'll start with Winston. I've coached in pretty much every arena there's been. I coached at Kansas, I coached in Kentucky, I coached in VCU, I coached at pretty much anybody, especially on the East Coast that you could name. And if there's a better home environment than Winston State, I want to see it. They definitely top 5 of any place I ever coached. It's unbelievable. The game atmosphere is unbelievable. It's different because you have to get used to, like at the Division I and some of the predominantly white colleges, the boosters and the people who pay the money, they're the ones that's on the floor. They got the good seats, A lot of times at HBCUs, it's kind of first come, first serve. There's no boosters. So the students are on the floor and the fans are on the floor. They entertain, it's more entertaining. The band's usually in there and they got DJ going and then different Greek organizations running. It's an unbelievable game experience. I'll tell anybody, if you get a chance to watch a divisional rivalry game and see either way, Winston versus Johnson Smith or Fayetteville State versus Johnson Smith or Fayetteville State, go. It's gonna the personal experience is going to be unbelievable.
Area code for Winston-Salem?
I'm at 336 now.
336. All right, we'll move on.
All right. So the next 3, I'm going to kind of put them in one and you can break them down a little bit. We don't want to lose anything on those stories, but you go through pretty much all the UNCs here. You've already done UNCW. So now you go UNC Charlotte, UNC Greensboro.
I got offered twice the money. and I got to work for a guy like Mark Price, the top 50, 60 player all the time in the NBA. Yes. So you do that. You do that. You just common basketball professional sense to do it. I hated it because when I took the Winston job, my whole intention was to stay down there and to get Fayetteville State one day or something like that. But when the opportunity came about, it came about because of Buzz Peterson. Him and Mark, because of the Hornets relationship. Buzz was in the front office of the Hornets. Mark was an assistant. He get the Charlotte job. My reputation again. Buzz worked for me, so he knew I'm pretty good in this region. I was going to be able to attract some people into the program because Mark didn't really know the landscape of high school ball. So that's how that came about, was through Buzz, and it's unbelievable. It was a great job. And again, I worked with some really good people with Houston. I worked with Houston again. Worked with Chris Ferguson, who's he's probably my favorite person I ever met. Nevertheless, coached with. Has some really, really good young guys. Tanner Smith, I guess you Georgia guys know Tanner. That's all staff. He's on administration. Pat Corrigan, another administrator. Got to work with Lewis' son, Kobe Lewis. Phenomenal basketball mind. But it was great. That was my first big time job, I guess. We got to take those charter flights every game. That was interesting. To get on those little private planes, and they know your kind of snacks you want. And the lady knew I like Pepsi, so I have my Pepsi and my little cookies on the chair every day. And
remember, you're talking to the Atlanta guys. No Pepsi references.
So that was cool. That was a big time experience. I wish we had got a little bit longer to try to figure that thing out. But again, this is a win business, right? You got to win games, and Division I basketball, they're gonna move you on, no matter what they say. If you don't win, you gotta go. And we didn't win, so we had to go. Then I got on Wes Miller at Greensboro. It's funny how life goes full circle. We had a time at Wilmington where we had to let a couple of assistants go. And it's funny, this business, to say the black guy never get kept. For this case, I was the only one left on that staff at Wilmington, as Wes was making some transitions on his staff at Greensboro. And we got to know each other. He interviewed at Gardner Webb when I was there. When I was transitioning to Western Carolina, he interviewed. That's where we met, but we wasn't friends. But we got to know each other on the road a little bit. And he wound up having a spot open up as the Charlotte thing was ending. I worked with Buzz, and we talked about working together when I was at Wilmington. But my whole thing was and I think that's why me and Buzz and his wife get along so fine. We wasn't having the best success at Wilmington at that time. But Buzz gave me a chance to go home, and he gave me a chance to work for him. He's a real popular guy in this business, and I wasn't going to jump ship on him because it wasn't going well. And some people might say like in this business, you should have left. That's a dumb move. But the way I was wired, like I wasn't going to bail on him while I was down. If we had had more success, maybe I would have got by there. But the way it was, and I was the only assistant on staff at the time. And I was like, man, I'm not going to leave you right now. I'm not going to leave you right now with what's going on. It wound up paying full dividends because I told that to Wes when he called me. And I think he appreciated that. I showed some loyalty to the Buzz. And Buzz and his wife, of course, appreciated that I didn't just jump ship when stuff went sour. So
loyalty counts. There's no doubt about it. Sometimes it feels like it might cost you, but in the long run, as you just mentioned, it'll come back and pay those dividends in the best way possible. Yep.
Yeah, it's a funny word in this business because it gotta go both ways, and you also gotta be careful. Part of being loyal is also being loyal to yourself and your family. And that's where I think, like, sometimes in my career I've made that mistake, and sometimes young coaches don't understand it because they hear those coaches talk about, hey, be loyal, but loyalty is to yourself and your family too. Like you can't let yourself slip. Try to be loyal to some of your bosses sometimes, and that's where the fire line come in. And you got to make sure you develop yourself as a coach and a person too. So,
right. So Charlotte was 704. I know that one. And then you went to Greensboro again. What was our area code now?
That's 336.
All right.
And then that takes us to where we've already discussed where you're at now, right?
919. Yes, sir. My Winston people, they call that the Trey 4 for whatever reason. People from Winston don't know why they call it the Trey 4, but I don't want to get beat up by the Winston people about this 336 area code, but they call it the Trey 4 for whatever reason.
Trey 4.
Okay. So for those of you scoring at home, 910 to 919, back to the 910 to 704 to 828 to 910. A lot of those 336 to 704 again to 336 to 919. That's a path, and all in North Carolina. How about that?
Yes, sir.
That's unbelievable. The king of Carolina right there.
That's what I am.
All right. So now we take it from, and you did a great job. We didn't even have to sound the shot clock too loud on you. You got it all in an hour. So now we always end it with our favorite part. We do some lightning round. Me and Searle do 3 apiece. So I got 3 at you here. And of course you can elaborate if you want to, but they're kind of quick ones. My first one is with all those moves, what's the worst gym you've ever coached in or played in?
The worst gym I ever coached in?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, he told us the best crowd, so I got to find out the worst gym.
The worst gym, like as far as like a piece of crap, I can't say that kind of, but Livingston, that place was a mess. It had no bathroom. That's the thing. The coaches that you changed the freaking classroom, and they didn't have no showers. You had to use the public bathroom. I hated that place.
Where was that at? I'm sorry, I missed it. Where did you say?
Livingstone.
Livingstone.
But it had like a good environment. So probably the Citadel after that. And then we play them this year, so don't record that because they might try to. The Citadel sucks. It's terrible. It's like 5 people in the gym, all cadets. You definitely got to bring your own energy in that place.
We always say, pack your monster.
Yeah, so
a place that ain't got nobody, pack your monster.
VMI is a close second. That place sucks too.
I love it. All right, the next one's a little more serious. I'm gonna go 4 questions today, Searle, because I always got to do a food one at the end. But
absolutely, let's go.
The next one's a little more serious. What's in coaching? We're all off the beaten path, so we say. You're kind of off. You're starting to trend upward again, so you're not so much off the beaten path. But what's the one time maybe you've been the most humbled in coaching? Whether it's sitting at a camp or in a gym recruiting and somebody didn't know who you were maybe, or something like that, where it kind of just made you go, oh man, I thought I was big time. I see now I got to take a couple of steps back. What was that? What's a moment that kind of sticks in your mind?
I don't know if it's a moment. That kind of stuff don't bother me. I like to actually slide in the gym without. I hate that people know me now because I can't go anywhere without somebody knowing, especially in this area. I don't know. Probably the most humbling was like after we got let go at Wilmington, after going through that experience. Because because I'm a talker, as you guys see. I probably got the longest show you guys ever recorded. And I knew I was going to Winston State. I kind of made my mind up I was going there, but I had like this month of time where kind of ain't got nothing to do. So I'm calling people and nobody pick up my calls. I was like, man, shoot. Like, I found out who my real friends were, but that was humbling because some guys that you talk to on a regular basis stop answering your calls and replying to your texts and stuff. But it's humbling, but it also was a learning experience because those guys now don't answer their calls. But let me stop. I'll answer their calls. But I know.
All right. So what's the best barbecue in Carolina?
The best barbecue in Carolina? Oh, man, I don't know. Like, I'll probably get shot for saying that. Being the Carolina, I do like the Eastern North Carolina barbecue more than the rest of the state. Y'all guys know the difference. It's supposed to be, it's 3 different kinds.
Big battle.
The Eastern barbecue is the vinegar based, and then kind of the middle of the state, they do like the tomato based, and they do like some mustard based out in the west part of the state.
Mustard, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I like the vinegar based, spending most of my time on the East Coast. I don't know if I have a favorite spot, though. I need to figure that out. I will stop at the Smithfield barbecue all the time just to give me some taste of that vinegar, but I don't know. That's a good question.
All right. And if there's one thing that with all the moving, you've had all these different coaches that you've worked for, and I know you've learned all kind of things. Is there one thing that maybe you haven't seen a coach do yet that you're like, whenever I get my head job, I'm going to take from all of them, but I got this one thing that's kind of mine. Is there something like that or maybe not?
No, you know what? All these guys have been phenomenal, man. Like Dave and like I just go through the Dave and Park was great at giving you freedom, which I like. Rich Scruggs kind of was wired the same way. He gave his assistants freedom. Larry was great at having a plan A. Probably the best game planner organizer that I've been with. The Buzz was great at the other stuff. He's a great in-game coach, great adjuster in-game, but then he was really good with the boosters and things of that nature and touch out the move in the community. Then you get with a guy like Mark Price, who's a phenomenal player. Learning some of the intricacies of ball screen offense was really good being with Mark. The West is like a combination of all. West is really good with the game planning and stuff as well, in-game coaching. His defensive stuff was phenomenal. His attention to detail was phenomenal. And even like with Helmy, like we talked about earlier, he was great. He taught me like some of the things to look out for if I ever got my own program. So I've had a really good mix of people. Lavelle would be cool because he's a really good play caller, but this would be the first time I've been with an experienced minority. So watching him move, even though it's in the HBCU setting, watching him move as a head coach, that's a minority himself would be kind of interesting. So this is a move that really interests me because it'd be my first time doing it with a guy that's experienced. So
all these rounds around North Carolina and even to Dallas, best summer travel AAU game that you've ever seen. In my brain, it sticks to a Atlanta Celtics, Alabama Ice at the Gibbons at the Dean Dome with Gerald Wallace and Donnell Harvey and triple overtimes. Was there what's a game that sticks to you? Because they all start to run together, right? What was that game?
Actually, I wasn't supposed to be in the gym, so I guess you can't have a violation if it's 20 years later, right? But it was actually in the Dean Dome. The old, like I said, Bob Gibbons. First time I saw OJ Mayo and the Greyhounds. They played against Greg Oden and that crew.
Mm-hmm.
In that game, I've never seen so many players. The whole court, the whole tournament was unbelievable. You had Greg Oden and Mike Conley and those guys versus OJ Mayo and Billy Walker. And then you had Chase Bullinger and those guys playing like the court over with Chase King. And that tournament itself was unbelievable. That's when I started learning who these guys were. So I just couldn't keep myself out the gym. I put on some jeans and regular polo. Nobody knew who I was really. So I sat there and watched the games all day. But watching OJ Mayo for the first time was like, I thought he was the next Jordan at that time.
How about that? And you said it early on in the podcast. You're a basketball fan. You weren't there cheating or trying to do any recruiting. You wanted to watch hoops.
I want to watch hoops, man.
Yeah. Well, here we are. Aside from Off the Beaten Path, favorite podcast or podcast that you listen to the most or that you listened to this morning? What's something you recommend for everybody to listen to? Basketball, church, whatever it might be, book on tape. What is it?
I float around. I've actually got I like listening to these books now. Since I took this job, I actually started listening. Coach McClinton is one of Coach McClinton's books. And this, I think I always knew because the 5-star guys always talk about Coach McClinton a lot about his history of how he's supposed to have been the one who started the 4 corners. He was the first one to really run fast breaks and things like that. it's been interesting listening to his first book because it's from his words and hearing his how he went about putting those systems in. And it's been really, that's why I've been listening to while I've been driving back and forth the road. But I've listened to a little bit of everything. I listen to all the Obama books all the time. The Art of War is one of my favorites as well. I listen to Art of War 5-6 times a year because I think you could tie it back into basketball. A lot of the strategies and things of that nature comes back to basketball. But those are probably some of my favorites. But I like everything. Like Cabral Huff, one of the Georgia guys, he's always talking about podcasts, things of that nature. And when he hit me on one, I usually start listening to it right away. So it kind of breaks up. But Coach McClendon is the one I got right now set up, but I will jump into other stuff.
Good stuff. All right. Well, listen, I've got one available Twitter spot left to follow. Who do I follow? Coach Dre Gray or Lavelle Moten? Who do I follow and why?
so he's the GOAT now. So you gotta follow that man. He's the GOAT. And he writes checks. I don't write checks, so don't follow me.
Okay. Wasn't fair to go against the boss on that one.
It's funny. Like the people I think people that know me know I just be clowning on my Twitter. But evidently some people take it serious. They're like, oh, this dude's a butthole. Like, dang, I ain't know how people thought this a butthole. I just be bored and just tweeting out stuff. But I think both of us are pretty good followers.
And we'll do that. Exactly. We'll make sure everybody's got an at Lavelle Moten and an at Coach Dre Gray. I like it. Corey nods because he knows it's time to plug our own social media here on Off the Beaten Path. It make sure that you guys get out there after following those two guys. You've got a Twitter for us on Off the Beaten Path with the little underscore after. And then the Instagram Off Beaten Path podcast. So make sure you click there and follow along with our social media. And it's almost time to wrap it up here, Dre. It's been great, but let's give you the platform one final time here. Do you have some shout outs, some people that you want to mention? You've mentioned about 1,712 people already, which is a podcast record. But who else? What else? Any final messages from you?
Corey, you and Daniel, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed my time with you guys. And one thing I've learned in this profession is like I want to give. I try to give as much as I can. I know I'm not perfect, but sometimes stuff that I say helps somebody. If I help one coach pick up something that makes him a little bit better coach and help our game grow, it was worth doing this for an hour 15, however long we've been on here. And that's always been my biggest thing. I really want to see you guys grow. I'm never threatened or I don't feel like I got to push other people down for myself to have success. So I'm always open to sharing and talking. And like I said, I know I get the rambling and all that stuff all the time, but I actually enjoy doing this stuff. So hopefully we help some young coach. Maybe you learn something from my own thing, maybe my recruiting role or something like that. But if anything I could ever do for you guys, you let me know. And thanks again for having me on.
We appreciate that, and good luck continuing to pick up those golden tickets as you go.
Hey, I got one shout out, and these guys will bust my balls if I don't do it. The bullies, they know who they are. The basketball bullies. That's my group text group, and we got some Zooms and stuff that we do. The bullies, man, like there you go. So we got shout out to the bullies, and they know who they are. But I appreciate you guys.
All right,
I love it.
Coach.
I love it. Two last things I'll say. I think. Having you on, obviously we appreciate it, but I think the old saying, clean up your own backyard before you knock on your neighbor's door would be a great saying for you. You've recruited where you're from, and then you allowed yourself to continue to grow as you moved. But the reasons you moved was you took care of your backyard. And that's awesome for you. So many people try to, recruit the big, you know what I mean? They go to the big cities and gravitate to other things, and you allowed you doing what you do right where you're at to make you keep moving. And I think that's awesome. And the bullies, they'll like that, I'm sure. They heard that one. And we end it like always. Thanks for listening to the podcast. It's a show for those who want to coach, as crazy as they are, those who used to coach, those who are coaches, who are the craziest ones, those who follow coaches, and those who hire and fire the coaches. We appreciate you listening, and let's keep it growing.
Thank you, guys.